Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, we're back after our well-deserved semester break. I have to say I was very impressed and pleased with the obvious amount of work that went into getting these base system videos all done and uploaded. Everybody did a fantastic job. Put on the applause button, but it's too early to start trying to find that one. All right, but maybe just a big like for the results on the base system video. You know what? It was just what we needed to see. Okay. Now, couple of new developments beyond that. All right. Let me go over here. I think I've got our class set up in Moodle here. Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm just pulling down some of the lecture notes for next week. All right. Now, the topics by week document is going to be kind of approximate for a little while, all right, because it's not so important for us to keep lockstep march like we have been for the first half of the semester. We've got 2 lab sessions, and so Monday is a mixed group, and Thursday are all people in security. So we're going to start diversifying a little bit, all right? And there are a couple of enhancements on the assignment that are really geared toward people that have, what's it called? Ethical hacking and incident response next semester. All right. And so for the Thursday class, we're going to set aside some time to look at those things. And for Monday, we're going to look at some other things. I will get a more updated one, all right, because we are going to, again, split between the theory and the practice, all right, and we are going to focus on these enhancements during our class time, all right, because they're equally important. We need to know why we do what we do, and we need to know what to do to get the job done. All right, so we're going to keep that balance. All right, but Monday lab, Thursday lab, they're going to start getting a little bit different. They're not going to be the same the way they have up to this point. Okay. The second thing is in Moodle. I'm going to turn off the camera here and save a little bit of heat on my processor. My CPU fan died. I ordered one, only one in Malaysia for this model, but Shopee hasn't delivered yet, so I have to be a little bit careful about this. What was I saying? Oh, right. In the assignment details and submission links. All right. The assignment groups have been updated. Enough people asked me about 4-person groups. So I have decided that groups can be 4 people now, but understand the requirements, all right? 4-person groups, 3-person groups, 2-person groups, it doesn't matter because the workload is the same, all right? You just want to make that clear. Just want to make that clear, all right? Is that it's proportional to the number of people in the group, all right? So, as I say, in response to your requests, enough people ask me about 4-person groups. I suppose it's something that has come from past experience. It's fine with me. It's just that the university standard is 3. And I have external examiners, internal examiners, review results committees, and all of this stuff. So that if I don't, conform to the standard, I have to justify it. But I'll justify it on the basis of your requests, all right? But let's be clear on the requirements. The assignment says 3 individual and 3 group enhancements because that's the university standard group size, all right? But 2-person group, 4-person group, no 5. 1 person is not a group, that's an individual, okay? And so we'll do it this way. We'll do it this way, right? Because, yeah, you want it, you got it. Okay. Sorry, it's still early. I know you think it's early. I think it's early too. What we want to do today is we're going to talk about PKI and SSL TLS. Now, I know that everybody, 3 a.m., ouch, net. Yeah, that is extraordinary effort to join us and enjoy our class here. Big heart on that one, lots of heart there. Okay. You too, ouch, Matt. The schedulers live their own life at APU. There's no way to, I have found no way to influence them. They live in their own kind of a world. And so can't, I sympathize with you, but I really can't do anything about that. But yes, please, thank you so much. Again, big applause for the early shift. I knew I've worked across time zones on that basis, 7-4 hours, and yeah, it gets to be a very strange routine sometimes. But at any rate, all right. What I was saying was, what we're going to do today is a little bit of review for all of the people who have had Introduction to Security and Forensics Technology, ISFT, all right, or SET Security Technologies back in the past a little bit, all right. But it's important to our class. It is a final exam topic. And since we've got the two groups here on Monday and Thursday, and the Thursday group, what's that, Lab 4, I think it's called, and Lab 3 on Monday. The Thursday group are mostly, if not almost all, people who have had this in a past class. And the people on Monday are people who have not. All right. We're going to extend our discussion from today to Monday. All right. So there's going to be an extra little kind of review and consolidation session for this topic on Monday. So everybody from Thursday is invited to join us, all right? If you feel like you want a little bit of extra review to get this back to the front of your mind, all right? I got to turn on the camera for this. A lot of times, I know this, a lot of times things like this just kind of slip to the back of our mind after the final exam, all right? So if you haven't had this one, don't worry, all right? We're going to kind of go through it today, and we'll have a little bit of an extra review and consolidation session on Monday, right? Because I recognize that this is not review for everyone, right? But since it is review for some, right, we're going to try to balance that difference, all right? So let's get started with it in a kind of very practical way, all right? Just to say that this, what we're talking about today, is totally common, all right? What we're talking about, and actually what the enhancement that is related to this on the assignment is about, is this, all right? When we pull up a website and it says HTTPS, all right, that means that everything we send across the network between our browser and our web server is encrypted. And if we click on this little lock icon, it says here verified by Amazon. Hey, let me see if I can, right, all right. And I can click through on here and get some more information, all right. Oh, this Firefox one is different. There we are. But here is the thing. Connection is encrypted. Ooh, look at this. Wow, SHA 256 128-bit key TLS 1.2. The page you were viewing was encrypted before being transmitted over the internet. All right, and there's a thing up here that says view certificate. Expires on 1 year's time. All right. Now, this is, you know what? I just changed browsers to Firefox. This looks a lot nicer in Google Chrome. So never mind. I'm going to just close that up and we'll talk about the theory of this first. All right. And then, well, actually, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to close this one up. And I'm going to go back here to, hey, where did it go? There it is. We'll do that in Chrome instead, because Chrome is a lot nicer interface than Firefox is for this. me just a second here. All right, there we go. All right. Just to say, oops. In Chrome, it looks a little bit different, all right? Not that much different. Certificate is valid. We can see the certificate information, etc., which is what we want to get the theory behind, because that is the practice. But the real point here is that HTTPS everywhere, as they call it, is becoming the new normal, right? So we need to understand how this mechanism works and how to get these secure connections established, all right? And there's two ways of doing this in the enhancements. One is called S-Tunnel, and the other one is called OpenVPN. And they both rely on this same SSL TLS encryption in order to secure the communication channel, all right, as the data is being sent across the network, all right? So that is the foundation of e-commerce. It is what makes our electronic payment systems work. It's what makes our electronic ordering systems work. It's become a standard mechanism for anything where we fill in a form and transfer data across the network. That's why it's so important for us to understand it. So in the lecture notes, this is broken into 3 parts, all right? We're going to do A and B, and again, we'll do it a little bit lightly today because for half our class, this is review, all right? And then we'll go back and just spend a little more time on it on Monday, all right? Because that's where most of the people who have not seen this before have a class scheduled. So the basic mechanism behind this is cryptography, all right, and encryption. So that's where we want to start. We want to start with understanding how encryption works, all right? And usual time, wait a minute, where'd it go? There it is. Okay, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., GMT +8, Australia Standard Time, or Western Australia Time is what it's also called. Notice that there's no Thursday class next week. That is because of a public holiday, in case you weren't aware, all right? But yeah, no problem there. Okay. Oop. All right. So let's start with a broad overview. We're going to come back to this, all right, when we talk about security policies. We're going to leave this down toward the end of the semester because, again, it's mostly a theoretical kind of a topic, all right? And its theoretical topics are the foundation of final exams. but we've got exam review materials and we've got plenty of time before we need to get thinking about the final exam. But just to say, the big picture is somehow the management, all right, people who are designing our system architectures, making decisions about hardware and software and services, need to also make decisions about security policy, all right? And that security policy theory guides practice of building a security environment. Who has access to the server room? What kind of locks do we have on the doors? Where do we station our guards? What kind of fire suppression systems do we put in? All right. And what measures do we take to protect our network from being hacked? All right. Now, the way the security environment is implemented is through security mechanisms, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about encryption, right? It's a tool, it's a mechanism, it's a technique, it's a technology, whatever you like to call it, all right? It's one thing that we can do to implement our security policy. And then back on the management side, monitoring and auditing procedures, somehow we need to watch this and make sure that it's working. Same thing, same question, same problem we've had with our DNS and our DHCP. Somehow we've got to be able to check it and make sure that it's doing what it is intended to do, because that's what's going to make our network work properly. So in a very real sense, all right, have to look at this kind of XYs. 1 and 4 are mostly management concerns. 2 and 3 are mostly technical concerns. All right. So these are the formal definitions. We will definitely get back to these on the exam review. All right. But here's the thing. In practice, in reality, there's no one thing that's going to help us with all of our concerns. All right. In Agile programming contests, they call it a mashup. We have to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that and combine them all together, all right, to make our system secure. Now, to the point we're working on here, all right, is using encryption to secure the communications before they go across the network, right? And doing something to make it readable and usable again when it arrives at its destination. Okay? That's the mechanism that we are talking about here, right? And so we talk about a security protocol, right? So the bottom line here is the one that's important. Encryption is a mechanism that can be incorporated into security protocols. Confidentiality, integrity, availability, right? Sometimes in security, called CIA, right? Not like the Black Ops people from the US, right? But confidentiality, integrity, availability. And the fourth one that we use cryptography for is to ensure identity, right? And again, these are various ways we can incorporate this mechanism of encryption into our overall security plan, our overall security environment. Now, you can see that there's some new vocabulary here: symmetric, public key, hash, digital signatures, PKI. This is why we've got to talk about this, because, yeah, there's a new set of vocabulary here that we need to be familiar with. Okay, so what does cryptography mean? All right. It's based on some very heavy higher level mathematics. All right. And that's all we need to know. We need to recognize that is the case, and we need to smile and be happy that there are serious professional mathematicians working on this for us. And all we need to do is make reasonably sensible, informed choices when we choose from a list. How nice is that? All right? We don't need to be experts in the technicalities of cryptography in order to take advantage of it. All right? That's how it's become an absolute standard feature of all of our web browsing. All right? So basically what it does is we take a plain text message that's human readable, and we pass it through an algorithm along with a little bit of randomness that we call a key, right? And what comes out, oops, sorry, somebody squeaked the microphone and it just made me react. Good on you, you win. It comes out in a series of new characters, right? Now, this really is just the beauty and joy of computer science, all right? Because we need to remember that a human readable message, when we say human readable message, we're actually not talking about anything except, hey, what happened here? I'm not talking about anything except laying a particular template over a bit stream, all right? And the simple demonstration here is go down, highlight something, and pick out your wingdings, Vaughn. Oh, suddenly that human readable message looks completely different, all right? But human readable is about the template that we lay over top of the bit stream. That same bit stream can mean anything, all right? And it just depends on what template we lay over the top of it to, ooh, there we go. Let's leave it that one. Now, that's a very simple one, but that's more like data hiding or obfuscation. Cryptography actually does mathematical transformations, right? And these mathematical transformations are deliberately complex all right? Because what we're trying to do is keep very technically skilled people from transforming this encrypted ciphertext back to the plain text message. You need to follow the protocol in order to be able to do that. That's why it relies so heavily on advanced mathematics, right? In order to make it difficult to transform this back to this, not just clicking and laying a new UTF over the top of it. So, key words here, vocabulary. Encryption scrambles up a message to make it unreadable by doing mathematical transformations on the bit stream. The algorithm determines how that is done. All right. In order to keep things straight, we refer to this as plain text, and we refer to this as ciphertext. Encryption keys, we're going to talk about that in some depth as we go on here. Algorithms, right? They transform the bit stream, these mathematical transformations. Confusion and diffusion, important, fundamental concepts in encryption. We don't have to go to the math, but we do need to know these concepts to have just that much depth to really appreciate how the encryption algorithms work. All right, so these are the goals for the designers of the encryption algorithms, the mathematicians who are working on this. Confusion and diffusion. And that's why we need the encryption key, right? Because that helps strengthen those mathematical properties of the algorithm as it transforms the bit stream. The key is key to security, if you'll pardon my saying it that way. So key length and algorithm strength, all right? When we're talking about those, we're talking about how well this confusion and diffusion of the output, how well the algorithm does that. And that's how our mathematicians are judged on their work. So, usually when we talk about a key, we talk about, we just call it a very large number, all right? But again, it's meant a number and a word and a paragraph and a page and a graphical image. They're all just bit stream to the computer, all right? So usually when we talk about keys, when we go back to Firefox, we'll see this again. A key is just the number of bits in the key, right, is what we talk about when we talk about key length. So we'll see 128, 256, 512, 1024, right, whatever we have. Now, this is another one that is super important. There are three general classes of encryption algorithms, all right? Two of those have the property of being reversible, all right? Let me just go back to my diagram here. Reversible means that we can take our plain text and convert it to ciphertext and use the same algorithm to decode the ciphertext and return it to plain text. There's one kind of algorithm that we can only go one way. What? That's called a hash algorithm. And while that sounds pretty dumb, it actually has a very important role, all right, in our cryptographic techniques. The one-way hash algorithm is an extremely important one. But we've got symmetric and reversible, all right? Symmetric and asymmetric refer to the keys that are required for these algorithms, all right? So we're going to really kind of try to use the more common terms, all right? Instead of saying symmetric reversible, we'll say conventional encryption algorithms. Instead of saying asymmetric, we'll call those public key. That's not a very accurate way to talk about it, but it's what everybody calls it, and so we'll just go along with that, all right? And the hash algorithms kind of in a class by themselves. So here's the thing. Symmetric encryption, right? Also conventional, or some people will call it shared key encryption, all right? Private key is listed here. It shouldn't be. I'm going to have to correct that because that one, it should be called secret. Secret key, yes. All right. Shared key, yes. Private key, we need to reserve that for a very particular use case. All right. So, encrypts the data. Somehow, both parties need to have the same key. And symmetric, well, the reason they call it classic, okay, is because it's been around for, ouch, man, most people say at least since the time the Roman general Julius Caesar had armies across Germany, France, and Britain, going from Italy, riding a horse, clunk, 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 all the way up Italy, all the way across the mountains, all the way across France to get to Bath and Bristol in Wales in the UK, all right? And lots of people have played around with this, you know, the same kind of people that like Sudoku and crosswords and, you know, mathematical games like that. There's a lot of encryption algorithms that were invented before we have nice, fast CPUs that can handle this at a completely different level, right? All of these are considered trivial for any kind of reasonably powered CPU, right? Like a Pentium from 1998 right up to 2008. Anything after 2008, now it's meant these are totally trivial to break the encryption. But this is the really simplest one. We'll look at this one when we look at our ASCII art in a week or so. We've got the Caesar application that does this for us, all right? Transforms it based on letter substitution, all right? So my name is Bob. We look this up. M becomes O, all right? Y becomes B. N, oh, N stays at N, all right? And A, Z. So we use this substitution letters. And in this case, if we're thinking about this as a classical encryption, this substitution alphabet is the encryption key. All right? And we need to know the algorithm and the secret key to transform this ciphertext back into plain text. That principle is still the same with our heavily mathematical ones, all right? But the implementation is heavily mathematical rather than something that humans find easy to handle. Bitwise XOR is a perfect example of a bitstream manipulation, right, that we're talking about with modern computer-based encryption, right? This can, and again, commonly used to make malicious code difficult to analyze. The forensics people are going to be seeing that and trying to figure out that one, right, when they get to another class. Right? We just kind of take it as an example of what it means to transform a bit stream, right? And in order to change plain text into ciphertext using a secret key, all right? And then at the other end, the other guys need to know that secret key in order to take the ciphertext and transform it back to plain text. Let's skip over that. That's just the technicalities of XOR, and we don't really need to be concerned about that. All right, the next one is public key encryption. And that one gets a little bit deeper. Wait a minute, let me just take a look here, see what we've got. And then the hash algorithms, okay. All right, let's carry on just a little farther here. Now, the difference between classical and public key encryption, asymmetric two-way encryption, all right? But it uses a key pair, all right? Now, the classical encryption been around for thousands of years. It took until 1974, 76, depending on who you believe, the Brits or the US guys, right? To work out the mathematics to make this possible. And it took another 10 years to actually make it practical and get it working in the software. Talk about the time it takes to transform theory into practice. There is an incredible example. Theoretically, they had it working in the mid-70s. In fact, in terms of code, it took them until almost the mid-1980s to get it working. And now, of course, it's just, you know, totally standard stuff. Okay? But the mathematics of this one is a matched pair of keys that are generated using very large random prime numbers and an operation that I don't actually know what it means, but it's just so fun to say. Euler's totient. Euler's totient. That'll make you feel better all day long. All right. So it comes out to be a key pair, and they are matched. All right. And the key thing, if you will, about the key pair is that what one key does, only the other key can undo it. All right? And this opens up a lot of possibilities for us, and it is an absolutely fundamental concept of our network security. What one key does, the other key will undo. All right. So what we do is we split that pair. All right. We take one half of it, lock it up somewhere, keep it secret and secure. That's called the private key. And we put the other one in any kind of a database repository where anybody can get it. That's called the public key, and that's why people refer to this as public key encryption. All right? The private key we need to keep secret and secure, because here's how it works. If I use the public key that I can get off your website or whatever and encrypt a message, it can only be unencrypted using the private key, which you keep secret and secure, which means that nobody can read this message except you. Not that. On the other hand, if I encrypt a message with my private key, anybody in the world can unencrypt it. It's not really a secret, but if I'm treating my private key properly, only I could have generated that message because someone can unencrypt it with the public key. So yeah, if my private key gets leaked or stolen or whatever somehow, then I have to make a police report and tell the people and, you know, quickly get it changed or whatever. But if I'm doing it right, I can't deny creating that message because I'm keeping my private key secret and secure. That's the rules. And that's a property that, ooh, another great word, non-repudiation, right? Means you cannot deny creating a message that can be decrypted with the public key. If it can decrypt it with the public key, it had to be created with the private key. That's the mathematics. Okay, so there it is in one diagram here. All right. For symmetric encryption, we need to have the same key to encrypt and take the ciphertext and return it back to plain text. All right. For asymmetric encryption, for example, we use the public key to encrypt and the private key to unencrypt. All right. But again, the important thing to remember is that it also works with the private key to encrypt and the public key to unencrypt. What one key does, the other key can undo. And yeah, just a note here, all right? Even on a fast processor, all right? Symmetric key encryption is anywhere from 10 times to 1,000 times faster than asymmetric encryption, all right? And so that's an important property to remember when we move on and talk about the protocols that we use, right? Because we're going to use the slower asymmetric public key encryption at the beginning, but we're going to use that in ways that allows us to switch over and use faster shared key encryption for the bulk of our communications. Get the best of both worlds. Oh, I don't know about you, but I think we should take a little break here. Let me put this down and shift this over and say, yep, no hands, got it. That's a problem with the encryption algorithm. Early Netscape used the date, 1996, something like that. All right. Continuous. Continuous record of issues. But oh, people keep trying. What was I thinking of? Yeah. We'll also find a series of serious, oops, yeah, it's not my talking though. You will also, ooh, ouch. All right, one more time. Let's give it a try here. Also find a series of serious bugs in the BSD implementation. Serious bugs in the BSD implementation. All right. Let's take a little break here. Let's come back at 9:36. Make it all threes on that one. Fires. Okay, yeah. We ended up with a couple of comments there on how tough it is in practice to actually get this right, right? And that's what we'll see in a little while when we talk about the difference between SSL and TLS. There's a constant evolution in the developments in terms of mathematics, all right, because it's the constant war between the people who are trying to live a normal life and the people who are trying to undermine that. But let's carry on and get through another part of our theoretical discussion. And again, we'll finish up this topic on Monday. So everyone who finds this to be a bit of a review, good on you. Everybody who doesn't, or who wants a little bit more refresher on it, you're all invited to the Monday session, right? Because our Thursday next week is preempted by a public holiday. Okay. Now, we do not get involved in the names of the algorithms, all right? The list of what algorithms are currently considered acceptable in terms of security changes from time to time. Not, every week, but every year, every 2 years, definitely, there is a change in the set. So we are absolutely not concerned with the names of these algorithms, but the general classes are fundamentally important to us. Let's talk about this other one. It seems like it's so pointless, all right? Why have something that just transforms one way from plain text to ciphertext, and you can never, mathematics and the goals for the cryptographers are you can never transform this back to the plain text, right? This is so extremely important. This is the standard way that all of our passwords work, all right? It's used in the standard password authentication schemes. It's used in digital signatures that we'll see later. It's used when you download files. If you download something from the internet and it shows you a long weird number and calls it the MD5, that's to verify that the file that you have downloaded is exactly the same file that the developer uploaded. And that's why the hash function is so important to us. All right? We can never take this ciphertext and transform it back to the plain text. All right? But we can compare, right? For example, with passwords, each time the user logs in, the system encrypts the password using the same algorithm, right? Whatever's typed in, it encrypts it and compares it to this trusted stored copy, right? And in our systems, this is stored in a file called etc shadow. We'll look at that a little bit later when we talk about user management, all right? This is a very old one where it was actually stored in the password file. All right. But if you look at this, you would never know. But I can tell you that this one and this one and one more, I can't remember which one it is, all right, actually have the same password. But remember what we talked about, confusion and diffusion. The way these hash algorithms work, mathematically, a goal for the mathematicians is that even if you use the same password, this ciphertext will be different. That's what makes a good hash algorithm. And again, knowing that is enough. We don't need to get involved in the mathematics. We just need to know the goal that they are faced with. All right. And the protocol, the mechanism. This is the way it's done. All right. Each time the user logs in, the first time we type it in twice, and after we type it in the second time, it gets stored in the database here in its encrypted form. And every time we log in after that, ROOT, TOOR, all right, it gets that TOOR is run through the same algorithm, and the output is compared to what we have here in ETC Shadow, our trusted stored database. Just to say, biometric systems work the same way if we're retina scanning or facial recognition or fingerprint recognition. All right. It's similar, but not the same as a hash algorithm, but the principle is precisely the same. All right. We have our trusted stored copy, and we take the immediate exemplar when you're at the airport, you put 2 fingers on the glass, and then compare it to what we have on file. Facial recognition, exactly the same way. So now this goes a little bit to the comments that were coming up just before we took a little bit of a break. All right. We cannot safely assume that anyone who captures a message in transit, an eavesdropper, an evil third party, a man in the middle, right? We have to assume that they do have complete details of the algorithms. They're published in academic papers. They're even published in patent applications, all right? So Kirchhoff's principle and Shannon's maxim are critical here. And you can see how long this history is, how long people have been cracking their cocos on working out how this works and what we can do to make our communication secure. So here's the bottom line. They're easy to perform if you have the right information, and infeasible, meaning impossible, really, all right, to perform if you don't have that information. Okay, and that involves a little bit of randomness. Now, I want to see where we're going with this because we don't want to get bogged down in this. Randomness is still, even after all of these decades since 1970s, all of these decades, it's still a hot topic in computer science research. Because there are people who are trying to attack our algorithms, people who are trying to take over our payments and break our passwords, break into our bank accounts, whatever it is, all right? There are very knowledgeable and expert people trying to get into our systems. I love this. I love this photo here. Brute force. All right. Why you call it brute force? Because all you do is try all possible combinations in order to get somebody's password. All right. It takes a lot of CPU power, but people are very, very afraid about this because CPU power gets easier and easier to come by. All right, so last point on this phase, all right, we don't need to know the algorithm names, all right? There are, it says here, hundreds. I'm certain that there's more than 1,000. There might even be more than 3,000 symmetric and hash algorithms. Not so many asymmetric ones, but certainly thousands to choose from. And again, it's still a hot topic in cryptography literature. More papers every week coming out about this is mine, and I like it because it does this, and I use it in this way. All right? And so what we have to do is choose from a list, all right? Which means that, again, it's important to understand that, all right? We don't need to be experts, but we do need to be able to find the list of what currently is considered secure. Okay, now this is 10A, there's a 10B, and a 10C. We're just a little bit out of the numbers, out of order on the numbers here. All right. But let's turn to a little bit of 10B. Yeah, you need a supercomputer. Nah, you need quantum. You need quantum advantage. Right? You want to hack Google, you need to get onto their quantum computing platform. Oh, somebody else did that. Oh, somebody else did that for me. Yes, please. Thank you. Sorry. I just didn't see it there. Yeah, you absolutely properly correct, Matt. You need the quantum advantage. And that's why people are so afraid of the technology that's coming up. I mean, the NIST has been working on this since, Alex Schmidt, like the 1990s. They started thinking about this. And now that we've got exemplars, they're in overdrive with the supercharger winding up because people are very, very scared about this because it is really underneath, all of our underneath all of our electronic commerce security. And if somebody finds a way to subvert these shared key, these public key, private key algorithms, which are based on the idea that the mathematics are too complicated to handle with a normal processor. We're back where we were. We're straight back to the Stone Age internet of the 1980s, if we can say something like that. The dinosaur days of the internet. Right, all right. Never mind about social engineering. That's outside our scope, right? That's just people trying to subvert the hard work that we do as systems administrators. We'll lightly consider that at the end of the semester. Okay, so we're making a transition here from just understanding about what the algorithms are to focusing more on how we use them for this HTTPS, getting the connection secured, all right, and certificate is valid. What does that mean? All right. How does this happen? Not only how does this happen, the important question here for our class in our context is how do we make this happen? All right. There are people behind all of this. All right. Oops, sorry. I want to be back here. People behind all of this. Connection is secure, certificate information, details, certification path. There are people behind all of this. And again, once again, see, in systems and network administration, them folks is us. All right, we are the people that make this happen. And that's what we're working our way up to. We won't finish this today. All right, we'll finish this discussion up on Monday. And as I say, anybody who doesn't find this review should be in that Monday session already. All right, other people are welcome to join. All right, so taking these basic these basic concepts that we've just reviewed, how do we combine this together to get that connection is secure when we go to a website? This is the normal. I want to call it a new normal, but it's not all that new, right? It's one that is increasingly becoming SSL everywhere, all right? SSL everywhere is something that Google was complaining about on my Windows 7 machine. Well, I switched to Firefox partly, but yeah, this one is the way of the world in these modern times. All right. So this is a little bit of review of the concepts that we have just talked about. All right. So here's where we get to 1994 or so, right, people started talking about this idea of a digital signature. Now, mind you, this is 20 years after it was first proposed in confidential documents in the military in the UK, and almost 20 years, more like 16 years after it first appeared in the academic literature. All right. So there was a company, RSA, right, named for the three guys who published the original academic paper about the idea of secure digital signatures. Right? And again, as I say, just sometimes it's fun to just understand the history. Took 15 years or so to actually make that a practical application and get it done in math and have enough processing power to make it practical. And that's when coincided with the time that people started really taking the idea of e-commerce seriously. But the basic idea of a digital signature is that I have my message and I sign it with my private key. That's a two-step process using a hash algorithm and our public key algorithm. We'll look at the details in a minute. All right. Public key available anywhere. All right. So that, again, anyone can unencrypt it. But what they unencrypt is a message digest that they can use to verify the original document. Infeasible. That's, again, why people are so worried about the idea of quantum computing, because quantum computing makes things that used to be infeasible easy. So here's the idea of a digital signature. All right. We take our plain text message and we run it through a hash algorithm, just like we did for the password. All right. But this time we call it a message digest. All right. It's just the outcome of the hash algorithm that we use. And we encrypt the message digest with the private key, which means that anyone can unencrypt the message digest with the public key. But if they can unencrypt that with the public key, that means it had to be created with my private key that I keep secret and secure. So that message had to come from me. All right? Just like signatures, all right, that we write on a piece of paper. If I'm making my digital payment, all right, the person who is getting paid does not want the possibility of me coming back and saying, no, I didn't do that, all right? But if I'm handling my private key properly, then I've got no grounds to do that. All right? It means I was negligent, and if I was negligent, it's still my fault. I still owe them the money, right? Because my digital signature is on that payment order. All right? And what we do is we decrypt the message digest and then run the message through the same algorithm and compare the new outcome with the one that we decrypted and make sure it is exactly the same. Ah, there it is. The picture is worth 1,000 words. We'll get to know these two people. This is Alice and this is Bob. A and B, they are the two most famous people in the encryption literature. Just like Barbara Jensen is the most famous person in the world of LDAP documentation, Alice and Bob dominate the encryption literature, right? But Bob creates his and again, this document can be anything. It can be PDF, it can be a proper Word document, it can just be a message from a text editor or a set of form fields that we enter into a web page, whatever it is. All right. You put that through the hash algorithm and come up with a message digest. All right. Encrypt that. Bob encrypts that with his private key. Somehow Alice has to have a copy of Bob's public key. All right. So Alice has the encrypted document, and the plain text document, the encrypted message digest, and Bob's public key. And the protocol is take that message digest, unencrypt it with the public key, right? Then take the document, run it through the same hash algorithm, compare those. Bit for bit comparison, it has to match 100%. There is no margin for error here. 100% the same. And compare it. If it works, we're good. Just to show you, this is what it actually looks like. And again, it's really just a bit stream. We've laid an ASCII template over the top of this one so that it looks like a bunch of letters. All right, but if we used some other template, it might look like an image. It might look like, you know, nothing at all. Just a bunch of hexadecimal digits, which is really the most accurate representation. But this is what it looks like when we put the ASCII template over the top. PGP, just one software that is used for generating key pairs, and it's been designed, it was designed, still is designed for secure email, digitally signed email messages in particular. All right. So our diagram again, a little Greek coming out of the end. Authenticity, integrity, non-repudiation. Right? Authenticity and non-repudiation are very closely related. The idea of integrity is that, you know, if the plain text message, if there's one bit changed in the plain text message, never mind one letter, which would be 8 bits or 16 bits, but if one bit changes in there, then these message digests won't match, all right? And the signature will be rejected. There's no margin for error, not even one bit. Oh my God, here, 10:06, okay. Hang on a second. Yeah, website blocks you after 5 wrong attempts. We're going to talk about that idea of passwords and lockout is a policy that we have to deal with as system administrators. The advantages and disadvantages of that. We'll deal with that in due time. Now, here's where we get to the tricky part. All right, here's where we get to the tricky part. Somehow, Alice needs to have Bob's public key to verify his digital signature. All right. Another use case, if we are using classical encryption, symmetric encryption, then how do we share the key? All right. You think back to Julius Caesar. He's sitting in Rome, acting as emperor, and his armies are in the UK, which is thousands of kilometers away, and no high-speed rail back in the day, right? So he had to have somebody on a horse, galump, 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 all the way across mountains, all the way across France, all the way across swimming across the English Channel, in order to get a message from Caesar in Rome to his general in Bath. And he encrypts it, but how does the general so far away, when the general wants to send a message back, it's the same process. How does the general so far away know what key to use to decrypt that message? All right. So clearly they can arrange in advance. All right. So this one is sent on what? Thursday the 12th, it left Rome, and on Thursday the 28th, it arrives in the UK. The guy's traveling on a horse. And how does the general decide to decipher it? So he goes to his prearranged code book and says, okay, the key for the 12th of October was this, and so I'll get the message here, and then I'll write my response on the 28th, and the guys back in Rome will have a copy of the key book. We share the key book, and they'll be able to look it up and say on the 28th of October, the key is this, and they'll be able to get the message. Clunky, right? Has to be worked out in advance, but it's got to be a better way. And that was the most exciting thing about public key encryption and this idea of digital signatures, is that it gave people ideas about secure key exchange. And that one came around in about, I can't remember, 1978, I think. They call it Diffie-Hellman key exchange for two preeminent cryptographers who first described how it should work. And of course, it took another 10 or 12 years to get the hardware that could support it. And now it's the way our network security works. All right. So Alice and Bob are going to use a shared key. They need some way to exchange this securely. All right. If they are going to use asymmetric encryption, they need some way to exchange their public keys and make sure that exchange is secure. All right. And the problem here is that an encryption key is just a bit string. What? We call it a very large number, but it's just a bit string. So here's a question. All right. Alice and Bob exchange public keys, and Alice selects a random number, and she says, all right, Bob, here's the thing. What we're going to do is we're going to use this random number as a shared key for a fast encryption algorithm, conventional encryption, using a shared key. We're both going to use the same thing. Here's a random number. I'm going to pass it to you, and then we can stop using slow public key encryption and use fast symmetric encryption. But here's the question. They have to first exchange their public key. Now, here's our scenario. The evil man in the middle can transparently intercept all of the communications between Alice and Bob. So when Alice sends a message that says, hi, Bob, here's my public key, the evil man in the middle intercepts it and keeps Alice's public key and sends the evil public key on to Bob. And Bob says, hi, Alice, here's my public key. Evil man in the middle does the same thing. Now, Alice thinks she has Bob's proper public key. Bob thinks he has Alice's proper public key, but it's not the case. And the evil man in the middle can intercept all of those communications, modify them in any way he likes, re-encrypt them with the evil private key, and pass them back along to their destination. These guys both have the evil public key, so they believe that they are communicating with each other, but in fact, they're only communicating with the evil man in the middle, who is doing whatever his pleasure is before he passes the message back on the channel to its destination. So people figured this one out and said, well, we've got to do something more to prevent this from happening. And that means that we need to get somehow a new element into our security policy, a new mechanism into our security protocols in order to prevent this man in the middle situation. And that's where we start talking about the public key infrastructure, or PKI. What? Because the man in the middle attack works when public keys all look the same and people exchange keys directly. So we build another system to prevent that, which is called a system of digital certificates that are issued by certificate authorities, right? And build this up into what they call the chain of trust and the public key infrastructure. And that is what we'll look at on Monday to see how this works the details of the certificate, and, oops, hey, wait a minute, there was one more. Oh, I wanted to see one more. Ah, right. Details of the certificate and what we call the certification path. All right? How does this work? We'll look at that. We'll look at that in some detail on Monday. I think we've covered enough for today. All right? And yeah. All right? Well, I got that. All right. Where trusted certificates come into action, absolutely. Okay. I'll just paste that in there. That's not 25 October, 1 November. All right. Just in case you want to review where trusted certificates come into action. All right. And again, it's not review for some people. That's why we're going to do that on Monday. All right. We've had a few people join us since the beginning, so I just want to go back and say one more time. All right. We're not quite, we're taking a couple of liberties with our topics by week in Moodle. Oops, hang on a minute. I don't know this one. We're rearranging our topics by week just a little bit, not radically, right? Because it's going to start being some differences between Monday and Thursday lab sessions. So that's not too important. It's just a little bit of notice about Agile, all right? But the one thing that I think people are interested in is that here on the assignment details and submission links, again, thank you so much for your hard work on the base system video submission. Enough people asked me if we could have 4-person groups that I decided, yeah, why not? All right. I can justify it on the basis of your feedback to my external examiners and oversight committees and reviews and things like that. But it's not a way to do less in terms of the assignment. The requirements are proportional to the size of the group. The assignment says 3 group enhancements because university standard for best group size is 3, all right? But the number of group enhancements is proportional to the number of people in the group, all right? There will not be 5-person groups, and 1 person is an individual, not a group, all right? But the assignment groups page here has been updated, all right? So that there are space for 4 people in a group, all right? And you can change this. You can go in and change your group selection for the next few weeks. I don't remember exactly the date that it closes, but it's definitely open for at least another 3 weeks, so that you've got time to make your selection, do your adjustments, and get started on deciding what you want to do for your individual enhancements and your group enhancements.